Welcome to That's What She Said, where we'll spill the tea on women empowerment in the Great Lakes Bay region with your host, Christiana Malacara.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of That's What She Said with me, Christiana Malacara. Thank you for tuning in whichever way you have found us today on That's What She Said Day, my favorite day of the week. It is a glorious day because it's a day about empowerment, right? That's What She Said Day was created to empower others. If you're a woman who is being affected by our podcast, our show, our radio show, if you're on our Facebook page and seeing all the interaction, if you're being affected in a way, let us know. Hey, thank you for empowering me today. That story really hit home to me. I feel like I'm empowering, someone around me, or, there was someone in my life that I'd really just, like to highlight that woman, because women empowering women, it's a special thing. It is so special. And with life just moving very quickly, it just is a beautiful thing to be able to highlight, who's the who, right? Who's the who and why are they doing what they're doing? Because we all have different reasons of why we're empowering others. But what's most important is that we stay positive and empower ourselves. And that is exactly what you are doing today by tuning in to That's What She Said when we spill the tea on women empowerment. There we go. How many times did I say empower? Somebody drop that down in the comments. Well, I am Christiana Malacara, and I have a wonderful guest with me today who she paints the town. Ladies and gentlemen, she paints the town, and quite literally, I have Miss Valerie Allen.
Hi, Christiana.
Hi, thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I love your mission, and I'm on board 100%.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. When someone does really say that, that they're following along, right? They're following along. It's nice to know.
It is.
It's nice to know that there's someone that's tuning in and listening on the other end of the sound waves.
That's right.
But it's also really nice to know that there's other women out there who are just as excited as I am about just getting a hand out, right? And just being able to help each other in whatever way, in whatever realm we've been placed in.
That's right.
And your realm is quite unique. Can you introduce yourself and tell us how the community might know you?
Sure. Well, my name is Valerie Allen. I go by Val, and I am an artist in our region, and it's my passion. And I've always been an artist, and I love spreading the word to all ages of creative folks, and hopefully turn them on to creating art or even thinking creatively. Everything fits together.
Yeah. So you said you've been an artist your whole life.
Yes.
Okay. Really though?
Oh, pretty much. I had wonderful, wonderful role models as I grew up with my family, my grandmothers and my mother, and then later on with different art teachers. So from about the third grade on, I knew I was going to be an artist.
Wow. That's you stuck to the path.
I stuck to the path.
Was it hard to stay on that path?
No, it was not hard. Here's what the deal was, though. When you're on that path of becoming or being an artist, you need to make money. So there's lots of different hats that you end up wearing. But in my mind, I would take these crazy jobs, let's say answering reservations for an airline, and turn it into a creative job and one leading down my path of being an artist. So in that particular career or job, let's say, that became my travel escape to research for art. So everything that I've done in my life, I feel has some connection to creativity. And if people really think about it, a lot that everybody does relies heavily on being a creative, problem-solving person.
Can you elaborate on that portion?
The problem solving?
Yes.
Yes. The problem solving for an artist is maybe you're getting ready to create a series of paintings, and again, you have to research, you discover what size you need. There's a lot of mechanics going on with it. So translate that into being a mechanic and organizing your thoughts. Some folks have the conception that artists are just free floating and anything goes, which we are kind of, and I've always been labeled a free spirit.
Okay.
But in the end, I need to take all those different components and organize and produce art.
So we're using both sides of the brain.
Both sides, absolutely.
Okay. So you said that you had a career and you had a job, a position,
Yes.
and you used that to navigate what you needed to happen next.
That's right. And I've had many jobs that have led down that path. So I mentioned, right out of college, going into reservations for an airline, which was a lot of fun, really.
That sounds like fun.
It was fun.
What was the highlight of that job?
The highlight of that job, basically, were the people that I worked with, because you're in a big room and you've got the headphones on, and this was right when the computers were coming out. And so you're on the phone pretty much constantly. And it's a beginning career type job. And I knew it wasn't where I was going to end up, but it did lead, like I said, to the travel. So that led me into the world of moving to Wisconsin and becoming a travel agent.
Okay.
Well, that one was a little quirky, and I didn't last too long at that one because I really wanted to get into an art field. So I applied for a printing company job, and thinking printing would be like my background, pulling hand-pulled prints on a lithography.
Okay, so like
stone.
Screen printing.
Like screen printing or engraving or
Mhm.
lithography or wood blocks. And what it really was working in a commercial printing company. So I ended up getting the job. I even showed him a portfolio
At the
of my
printing job?
hand-pulled prints. And they're looking at him like, I don't know quite how this ties with this job, but you're in.
Hey, that was pretty bold of you to bring a portfolio.
Do you believe that? I still can't believe I did that. So one of my jobs at that particular place, I ended up being director of marketing. So of course, marketing people are very creative and very thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
And I would come up with these crazy displays in the showroom, and I would work with ad agency people, and they're all a bunch of artists, really.
Mm-hmm. So in the printmaking.
Yes.
For those of us who are listening and thinking, printmaking, what is that? So printmaking is essentially ink pushing through a screen to have onto a paper or surface.
That
correct?
that would be a silk screen method, but I was trained more in the lithography and the intaglio and wood blocks, which would be actually applying the ink on top of a surface and then running it under a press. And I still do a lot of that in my studio, and I teach printmaking out of my studio as well. And the product I use to teach that is a crazy thing called a jelly plate, which feels like Jell-O.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
So here's a tidbit about me. I went to fine arts college.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
All these cool words. You're bringing back these, many silk screening and printing and mono printing classes that I've gone through.
Mono printing, I love.
So
mixed
fun.
Media. Yeah. Collage. You get it.
Yep, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'll have to share a link in the comments here what we're actually talking about for those listeners who are just like, what is it? Now we're talking.
It's so fun.
So you traveled. You said you traveled.
Yes.
What are some of the best places, the most influential places you've been to?
Oh, I was at a very influential place. About the time I was, this was a game changer really for me. It was a time when I was going through a huge life transition, and I went with another artist.
Okay.
Who shall remain nameless.
Uh-oh.
I know, it's one of those
still scandalous now.
Anyway, I went to Greece for a month.
Wow.
And that became, for my art, very, very powerful. Because when I went there, I knew I was going to be creating art while I was there, but I had to, again, organize my thoughts, get all the creative thoughts put together. And I realized that I would need something portable to take over there, something that I could do late in the evenings when we weren't touring around Greece, because lots to see, and something that I could produce. But I had one more element. I wanted to produce something that I could give to people at the end, give back to the people that would be entertaining me or whatever. Yes.
Okay. So,
yes.
You're gifting your artwork.
Yes. Okay. Gifting the artwork back.
Okay. So you mentioned you had to organize your thoughts.
Yes.
So you have this creative bubble, and I can picture it, right? As an artist,
That's a good way,
when you start thinking of this, you have all these little, little bubbles running inside this big bubble of thought, and this is
Yeah.
all you want. All you want to do is just create, right?
Right, right.
And then you're saying you have to organize these. So we're putting all of
Yes.
our bubbles in a line here now.
That's right.
And we're-
Bullet points.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
is that challenging to do?
Not really. I've always
Okay.
been a list maker.
Mm.
So in this case, I knew it had to be something small. So a little pine wood block, my carving tools. I don't know if that would still go nowadays,
Yeah.
but in my packed luggage, I had
Mhm.
my carving tools. And so I did mini wood blocks. They were like 9 by 12 inches. I could print them with the back of a wooden spoon.
Yeah.
And I'd have this edition of prints that I could then gift to folks that I met as I traveled.
Oh, so this trip was so monumentous. You said, oh goodness, I have so many trips, but this one.
That one.
Why was that one
Yes.
the pivotal life-changing trip?
I think it was because there were a lot of challenges when I arrived. There was a huge language barrier. There was meeting up and traveling on ferries to get to this remote island. On the island, there were no cars, which is fine. It was
Mhm.
beautiful. And it was like my senses were being bombarded. It was like an overload of stimulation of color and light and scenery and culture. And it took me a month to even get in the groove.
Okay, wait, how long were you there?
I was there 1 month. So by the time I came back, I felt like, oh, I want to live in Greece,
So navigating through Greece, and I'm assuming it was your first time, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Was this your first time out of the country, or?
Let me think. Out of first time in Europe for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd been to
Okay.
Mexico and
Mhm.
spent time, which I love too. And Canada. I'm trying to think. Oh, I'd been to Luxembourg. So that's Europe. Yeah.
Okay. So in Greece, this pivotal kind of just light, right, just shines on.
Yes.
So you have all these
yes.
bubbles of creative thoughts. We line them
Yes.
together. We're creating artwork.
Yeah.
What was that feeling I'm here. I'm here.
Mhm.
And when I leave, things are going to be different.
Mhm.
What was that experience?
Okay. So while I was there, I journaled every day. And I cannot recommend that enough for folks to journal. I was talking to another artist just the other day, and I asked her what her words of wisdom would be. Kimberly Santini is her name. And she said journaling is number one, her words of wisdom.
Why? Why is
And
that number one?
the reason it's number one, again, we're back to that translating our thoughts, getting our thoughts on paper. They can change. And you may not even read this journal again. In most cases, you don't go back and read your journals. But it's centering, it grounds you. And so while I was in Greece, I would do a notebook of journaling every day, usually late at night. Now I've switched that practice to something called morning pages, which now I journal first thing in the morning, 3 pages on a notebook page, and just like a mechanical, or what do they call that? Automatic writing. You just write.
You just flow of thoughts.
Just flow thoughts. Sometimes I'll throw a list in there. Sometimes I'll throw a title of a painting in there. So in Greece, I was putting all these emotional thoughts, these ideas for paintings. I met a lot of expat artists over there. And so we would talk art all day. And I came back with so many painting ideas, which I then proceeded to create a series. And I'm still working on that series. And this has been 25 years.
Wow. Okay. This is so exciting to me.
Oh, that's what I want.
I'm getting excited. For those of you who are listening, if you know someone who wants to send me to Greece, I'm ready.
Let's all go.
Greece has been on my bucket list for a long
Oh,
time.
gosh, it's inspiring.
I've traveled through Italy, done
Yep,
all of that. I
yep,
went through
yep.
Slovenia, but
Uh-huh.
Greece has just always been on my bucket
Yeah.
list. So now I'm even more motivated.
Okay. Oh, good. Good.
So the series,
Yes.
was that an internal reflection that got onto canvas or paper,
Mhm.
or was that documentation of your journaling? What does that series look like?
So the series primarily took off due to a lot of the ruins and the architecture that I was viewing, and then ultimately into the statues, which led me into research. And this all relates to empowering women in the end.
Okay.
And it relates to Athena.
Yeah.
And she is a goddess, right? And so I kind of made my autobiography pretending or symbolizing that I am Athena and it's my timeline. And it's Athena's Timeline is the name of the series. So the paintings that are Greek inspired all relate to that. So I come away feeling very strong when I'm working on that series.
So for the listeners who's Athena? Can you brief us on who is Athena, the goddess?
Well, she is the goddess, and she is the goddess of war. So that's kind of more of a negative, but she's also kind of the goddess of crafts and arts as well. So I really related to her, and I do a lot of thinking with the way a word looks when it's written in cursive. And I love the way Athena looks in cursive. I know that sounds crazy, but these are all things that inspire me. This is how I take off on things.
Okay. So we are linking here on so many levels. My listeners are probably like, slow down. But when I create artwork, I think, and when I look at text, I look at the different sizes, the different letters, and then the overall shape that form is making. And then those shapes are translated, right? And that's all essentially what letters are. It's just the shapes and lines that form into shape. So I'm right here. We're vibing. We got it.
You know what I'm talking about. Again, it's great. And so it's all of those things coming together. It's just a beautiful word.
So when you're saying Athena, the Greek goddess,
inspired
you.
Yes, a strong woman. And when I'm take on that personality in my painting world, I go, I can go larger, I can go very small, because small works can be very intimate and powerful as well. I'll use a lot of abstraction. I'm primarily an abstract artist. So when I have a name like Athena's Timeline, assigned to myself, as a series, it can go on forever. I mean, a timeline goes on forever. So I've opened up a lot of material for myself. And then I can research that further each time I work with it. I have several series that keep me motivated. That's one of them. Another series is 100 Years series.
Okay.
Again, that can go on a long time. And that's based on being a maker, being a creative maker. And it has a lot to do with my ancestors in the Appalachian region who would make quilts and clothing and furniture and all of these things. So that abstraction looks more like a crazy quilt. The Athena Timeline looks more like Greek architecture with columns, a little more order. And then another big series for me is Composer's Campaign. And Composer's Campaign is my musical inspiration that goes into my work.
Very dynamic.
So
let's go back to makers.
Yes.
What is a maker, and why do we bring this up? Because there's makers in all industries, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So is a maker an important person?
A maker is a very important person. And when did we start hearing that term a lot? The past few years, really. People will identify, I'm a maker. And I feel like I'm a maker. I feel like a maker gets enjoyment and passion out of putting things together, almost like puzzle pieces. And let's say a crazy quilt. These people that were making the quilts and that sort of thing, they weren't looking for any kind of notoriety or any recognition. It was just what they do. It's making. And that's how art should be viewed. We a lot of times get caught up in, I want to win that prize or I want to sell that painting. But there are many artists who just do it out of the love of creating art. And I think that's a much better mindset to go into it with.
Along your journey as an artist, as a maker, is there someone who really stands out to you that said, this person or this time period that I was, with this person or creating with this person really influenced me? Was there anybody that really pops out to you?
Yeah, there are two people that pop out. And one, my grandmother from my dad's side, she would, I was with her a lot. And she is the woman who taught me fine sewing and the quilting and the cooking and the love of furniture, the grandfather side, the making of the furniture. So there's that segment. And then the other woman was my art teacher in high school. She was phenomenal, Mrs. Morris. And we're in a little kind of country school in Southern Ohio. And she taught us, I don't know who, every Friday we would have a day-long note session on just writing notes on art history.
Oh, wow.
Every Friday. This was not college. This was high school.
Yeah, this
And
sounds
we
like my college
Yeah,
course.
and we
Okay.
would sit there and everybody would go, "Oh, no, we gotta sit here and take notes."
And here's Val.
And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yeah," and you wrote them. What's weird, you would write them verbatim as to what she was lecturing, and then she would grade those. And I said, "Well, why don't you just type them and hand them to us?" "Oh, no, no. By writing it, you will remember it." And she was right.
Do you think that's where your love for, cursive and handwriting came
Yes,
from?
because I always wanted that notebook to look really cool, you know?
Well, okay,
I'm
so
sad that cursive is going out.
I try to use it as
I
much as
do
possible,
too.
and I try to teach. I have a little one who's
Yes.
in the writing cursive stage, so I
Yep.
try to
It's
preserve it as
gonna
much
be
as
on us to
possible.
teach the little ones now.
Yeah, or
Yes.
maybe this is how we are gonna pass secrets along one day.
That's right. Good idea.
It'll be its own language.
I love
So,
it.
women,
Mhm.
are women makers?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
How?
How are women makers? They just naturally do it every day. Every meal that you make, every, patch that you put on a sock. We're using our hands, we're using our talents to simply make and create. And yes, men are makers.
But women.
But women are really the makers. Look at how much we do every day that leads to something being either invented or made. We improvise, we adapt.
Was there a time that you've had to adapt quickly in your life where we're like, whoa, that pivot. Here we go.
Oh boy, pivots are crazy, aren't
Well,
they?
you started out by saying that you knew you were an artist from 3rd grade.
Yes.
And this journey was a straight and narrow.
That's right. It was not straight and narrow, was it? It bounced all over the place. So, a couple of pivots would be probably dealing with moves in and out of different areas, and where I would have to adapt quickly. And the biggest move was right after that transition in Greece.
Mm. Where'd you go?
And I went to Midland, Michigan. Yay!
Yeah, I'd say from Greece to Midland.
That was
Midland is a creative place.
Yes, it is, and it was chosen by me just for that fact. I lived up north a little bit, the Tawas and Oscoda area, all you folks up there, hi. And I moved to Midland because I was going through a divorce and I was reinventing myself, but I knew I wanted to stay close enough so that my son could travel back and forth. So I drew a big circle on a map of a 60-mile radius, I think it was. Bay City fell into that circle. Midland fell into that circle.
There you go.
And Midland won because of the Grace A. Dow Library that had a huge art section.
They do. The whole city is made of art.
Yes.
Frank Lloyd Wright
It's the Adam B. Dow.
the Dows,
Adam B. Dow.
the president, the presence of creativity.
Yes,
is
it's
there in Midland
everywhere.
County. Yeah.
The influences absolutely is.
I always think that creative people, we you say, oh, we think outside of the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think in a sense, creative people don't even see the box sometimes.
We just kick it to the side.
And you've said you've created your own path.
Right.
So you can relate to this.
I can relate to reinvention, absolutely. And I feel like people that can reinvent themselves quickly, they have longevity. I feel that they're going to stay younger. I feel their curiosity keeps them going. And if you throw in a creative mix of passion in there, it's a good way. Reinvention is really good.
So today we have Miss Valerie Allen with us, and we are talking about her journey, a very creative journey outside of the box. And when we come back, which I hope you will come back and stay tuned with us, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Miss Valerie Allen and what makes her tick now. What is she doing? And also what's next on this journey of her painting the town.
That's What She Said with Christiana Malacara is back. Now let's spill the tea.
Thank you for coming back to the second portion of That's What She Said on That's What She Said Day. Whew, man, I am just so thrilled to have who I have with me as a guest today, Valerie Allen. She is a maker, and she is making it happen for the Great Lakes Bay region. What is essentially we're talking about is being a creative, and that's a Google search away. But being a creative in so many different ways, when at times being a creative person may have not always been accepted. And that path it's a rough one. It's a rough one. And it's, let's say it's not very lucrative at times either. So your personal journey to be a lifelong artist is something to be commended. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for doing that for all the artists out there, and to say, hey, this can be done.
It can be done.
It can. What were some of the biggest challenges that you overcame as an artist?
Well, you mentioned, the career path that you take. And like I mentioned in the first half, taking jobs that weren't necessarily considered an art job, but in my mind, to keep me going, fitting that into that little hole, fitting that into that peg, you know what I mean? And so the jobs, you need money. Artists need money. And that means you're not always going to be in your studio painting and painting away and selling those paintings, especially if you're true to yourself and your work relates to you. And it may not relate. There's somebody out there that's going to relate to it, but you're not going to find them right off the bat, especially if you're working with abstract art. So these jobs that I would have, and I ended up taking a path into the nonprofit world, which fit and dovetailed completely. So I worked at several different art centers, and I found that very, very creative and very, very worthwhile, even though it was taking me away from the studio. So then you learn to time management, and you learn to create art on your off days and after work. And you just do that. And it's hard. It's hard to have that energy, especially if during the day you're using up your creativity, either maybe teaching art, or maybe you're running a museum store, or you're curating other artists, or you're uplifting other artists by marketing for them. It takes a lot of energy and creativity going into all that.
It does. So where did you find the energy to create art after work?
Okay, so here's where I find my energy, and I still do, even though now I have the luxury of more time to do this specifically. But I would set deadlines for myself, and here's what my deadlines would look like. I would look for either exhibits or shows or call for artists. And I would deliberately pick one of them that may sound completely out of reach, completely could not happen. I don't have the time to do this. When am I going to do this? But I guess it harkens back to my love of going to school. I really like homework assignments. Is that weird?
I'm guilty too.
I'm kind of weird. And when I would get that deadline, I would put it on the calendar, and by golly, I'm going to hit that deadline. You can pretty much count on it. And my parents, as a young child, knew that. When I said that I was going to do something, especially if it was in the art world, they knew it was going to be done. And they knew that they were going to be responsible to drive me to that occasion.
So this sense of self-motivation.
Yes, very strong. And not everybody has it, but when I recognize it in a student, it will look like this. It'll be a student that is always on time, and a student that listens and pays attention, that does extra work, and maybe can't afford that particular class. But if you see that kind of motivation, I've started a new process with my classes, and I just started it, where I'm going to be giving a scholarship to a student, and they're going to have to kind of show me that they really are motivated. You know, some folks think that everybody can be a creative artist. We mentioned, is everybody a maker? And I'm kind of alluding, yes, they are. But not everybody is an over the top motivated artist. And when you see that, those folks really need to be patted on the back and rewarded.
They do. Art is it's expensive.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. It's a lot of so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
When and I'm pulling a lot of life experiences from this episode here.
Sure.
When I was in my studio working, that was a lot of
Mhm.
time by myself. Did
That's
you find
true.
that?
Oh, yes.
Did
Yes.
you enjoy that? And should we have time by ourselves? Should we not? You know, what do you think? What are your
Oh,
thoughts on
here are my
just
thoughts.
a creator and a
Yes.
woman? Should we have time by ourselves?
Yes, absolutely. And I am, there's a couple of styles of artists. One artist likes to be by themselves in the studio. Other artists like to be around a lot of people in their studio. I'm a little bit of a mix, but on the majority of time when I'm working, my favorite time to work in the studio is when I'm totally alone. I usually don't listen to a lot of music unless it's relating right to the piece. But when you're talking about being by yourself and do we deserve to be by ourselves, we absolutely do. And we have to be very protective of that, because
How do we do that? How do we
here's
protect
how
our
that
time?
can look. It can look like, if you're and I'm all about community of artists working together. I'm all about that. But they need to respect each other's space. And so it could look like me being protective and not being rude, but just saying, I really need to concentrate. Or I'm taking a direction today that I'm going to do deep work in my painting. Intentionally. And this is my time. I need to do this. I'm working toward a deadline. And I will make it apparent that I do not want to be disturbed. And it works pretty well. It works pretty well where I can just walk away and not feel like I'm not being a team player. So
there's no guilt related.
No guilt related to that. It's the direction I'm taking that day.
You think that the guilt-free part of being a woman, is that hard to come by?
Yes, it is. It is. Here's what that guilt can look like, especially if you're running a family and doing all of that. There's so many demands, and we don't have a lot of time. So getting to that point, a lot of our time may come after everybody's asleep. There was a time in my life when I would wake up at 5 in the morning, and there's the 5 o'clock. Have you heard of that 5 in the morning club or something?
Yeah.
So I would do that just so I'd have 2 hours to create some art. And boy, that's rough. That's rough to get up at 5 in the morning. I'm not a morning person either.
I'm not a morning person. So it's rough to get up at 5 in the morning, period.
Yes.
But let alone forcing yourself to be creative
to turn
so
it on.
early.
Yeah, to turn it on. But you just do. You just do that. But yeah, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes on when you're putting yourself first, don't you think? You just have to do it. Now it's easier now for me, I admit. I've pretty much taken on this art thing now 5 years ago full time. I'm not working at nonprofits. I'm doing it full time. And I've turned that into like a little mini business, I came up with the name Art Ladders for our umbrella of art activities, which includes our online classes and our podcast and things like that. So I've taken myself out of the working world and put it back in the working world. But this time it's for art.
To empower you. This sounds like, Art Ladders is to empower others to be creative.
Yes.
So let's kind of go back to that. And I have another question, because during the break you had told me that you're also a mom, right? And so,
yes.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to empowering the community, what are some things specific that you feel need to happen that we need to do as community members?
Okay, as community members. Oh, right. Well, number one is, when the nonprofits are having exhibits or activities downtown and that sort of thing, to bring your children and go to those events. Not only will your children be uplifted, but the artists that you visit are definitely going to appreciate it and really like that. And even if it's for an hour or two, just kind of go there. That's what a community can do. A community that is filled with art, I feel, is a happier community. I feel that it's an intellectual community. It's very cultural, and art can heal, art can inspire, and it's very, very important for the community to embrace that. And I feel Mid Michigan is doing a pretty good job with that.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. This region is definitely, should I say, like, up to their game, right?
Yes. Oh,
kind of
yes.
taking that on, if it looks like a mural or a sculpture or a class, or
Yes.
promoting other artists just internally in the resources that we have. I think
Mhm.
so. For our listeners here in these last 15 minutes of the show,
Mhm.
I do have Ms. Valerie Allen on,
Mhm.
and she's a Great Lakes Bay resident who, through her artwork and just being a wonderful glow, she has inspired a lot of other artists, but just community members in general, to just get more involved.
Mhm.
But she's also a mother.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how is it that we're wearing this very creative hat that's, as a creative as well, things just kind of just pile up sometimes because we have all these thoughts and we want to expose them, but at the same time we have this obligation, right? So
Right.
what did that balance look for you, and what does it look for
So
you?
the family balance, and I was telling you earlier, I have my son who's now out in California, and then I have 3 stepsons. Now, all of these children are adults now, and they're all working and living their lives. And so the hard work for me is done, I feel.
Mhm.
But as my son was growing up, he's the kid that would get out of school, come down to my gallery, play with cardboard boxes while I'm waiting on clients or doing picture framing. That was another one of my hats that I would do. And he became very attuned to living around sculpture pieces, ceramics, paintings, and very much an art lover, but made a huge decision to go into medicine, not art, which is a good thing. But very much an art appreciator, but he was carted to all the outdoor art fairs. He'd help me set up the booth and this and that. When I made the big move to Midland, he came with me, and we just,
Was it challenging to lug around art and set up and promote yourself, and then you're like, all right, come on,
Yes.
and we have this obligation, like I
Yes.
said, of a child, and what their needs are, and also as we're filling our cup as an artist up, but constantly having this obligation, this child that we have to maintain, both styles of life.
That's right. And for young mothers, and if they're still at home, let's say under the age of 18, my best advice is you take them with you. They learn about art. My youngest stepson, I tell him he could be an art critic. He grew up around art. My husband now, we've been married 22 years, so it's not a new husband, but does that sound weird? But it feels new to me.
Well, I'm glad it still feels new.
It feels new.
22 years. Okay, so
now we're gonna go with that one.
We're gonna ask for some of that advice if we're gonna talk about 22-year-old new relationships.
Isn't that weird? But that young man became so articulate in talking about art. You would feel like you had the museum docent right there next to you. He's just
definitely
amazing.
Had an influence over him.
It definitely had an influence.
So you mentioned your husband now
Yes.
of 22 years.
Of 22 years.
He's an artist too?
He is Armin Mersman. He's big in the Midland community, Saginaw community. He's always been an artist in this region. And he and I formed Art Ladders together. We co-host the podcast together, and our podcast is reaching out to artists and art lovers. And as artists, he and I carry on conversations on topics like artists avoiding imposter syndrome. not thinking that we're worthy to be artists, those types of topics. Or how do you maneuver getting into a juried show? So we have that component. And then we interview other artists around the world, really, through Instagram. It's great. I can meet all sorts of people.
Instagram is fun.
Oh man.
So how did that come
yeah.
about? How did you guys end up saying this is a podcast that we want to do, and how do we reach and empower, other people in the community? What was that idea?
It was always in the back of my mind, and it kind of during that crazy time period when we're all in lockdown, and I don't even like to go back there, but that was a positive. That's when the public really learned about artists via social media. And I worked at a nonprofit at that point, Studio 23, and we were one of the first nonprofits, I'm proud to say, that went on board with heavy duty live videotaping of outside events, or doing little workshops right in our houses and putting them on YouTube, that sort of thing. So that's when Armin and I started thinking about, we should do a podcast, because I'm an avid podcast listener person. And I had the name Art Ladder singular in my mind. But then when we went to get a .com, that one was taken. So I said, Art Ladders. Now that doesn't have quite the ring, but well, now we love it because it's different phases of art and different avenues we can take. So the podcast in particular, which is bi-weekly, came about through our coffee discussions in the morning on Saturdays. If somebody was in our household, they would think, do they talk about art all the time?
What's the answer?
The answer is yes. Everything circles back, because he's just as crazy as I am about art. I mean, we are equals on that.
Do you remember reality TV shows? Yeah.
Yes.
This is what I'm seeing here.
This is a reality show. Oh, that would be crazy.
Uh-oh.
And we don't always agree. In fact, we used to do a little, I don't know, a little routine, I guess you would call it, where it was called He Said, She Said, and we would critique different artworks. It was during the art prize in Grand Rapids. We would pick 10 of our favorites and then compare and contrast the two. It was a lot of fun.
So jokingly, you said you had a, this your husband now.
Yes, my husband now.
Of 22 years. What advice are you going to pass along to all of our listeners who are like, oh, I got a husband of 10. And
I'm just about, yeah, I think they say opposites attract. And we are a little, if people heard us, they would probably think we were kind of opposite. I'm the more optimistic and kind of like I said, free floating, freewheeler. And he's German for one. He's very disciplined, very by the book, as far as his art being very meticulous. My art's really splashy. So we're opposites, right? But our commonality is this passion for creating art and creative process. That's what really keeps it alive, people. So just get out a paintbrush and start swinging paint. You're going to be fine.
I love that piece of it. So, finding like-minded people to keep us going. Mm-hmm. Where do we find that?
Okay. And a lot has been said negative about social media. And I'm an Instagram person and I do love it. And I know there's a lot of negativity and who knows what's going to happen with it. But I have found a community of like-minded people through that. But I guard my algorithm very much. If there's something on there that I'm not liking, I block it. Or if, it pops up and said, do you like this? No, I don't like this. So I try to keep my algorithm to fit me.
Yeah.
So I just hit those buttons all the time. But the other way is to take a class. You meet like-minded people that way. The other thing, go to openings, receptions. It's a great date to do it.
I have to say, we're live right now in the moment we are. And your groom is on.
My groom. Oh my gosh. Did he comment?
He did.
No way.
For those of you who are listening on the radio and cannot see Val,
I'm
she's blushing.
I'm bright red. I can feel it.
He said 22 great years.
Oh, 20. Oh, I'm going to, now there you brought the Kleenex, right? That's what the Kleenex was for.
At some point, everybody needs tissue.
So we have a good time.
The connection between people, you
Yes,
know, a spouse,
yes.
an artist, a
Yes.
child,
Mhm.
a student.
Yes, yes.
Why
Important.
is it so important for women to have those connections? And does that always need to be a woman? Should we have women, you know, women connecting with other women to empower each other? What is your opinion on that?
My opinion is I have a very good friend. She's down in Florida. I have lots of good friends, but the one, Ruth, out there. Hi, Ruth. She's in Florida now, and she was kind of my confidant in the art world, and we would brainstorm and this and that. One of my confidants. And it's very, very important, but I don't necessarily know if it's definitely not all women for me, because I know that I have good friends who are male. The commonality is the art. It's the art for me that connects me. And it's a great group of people to be with. Highly recommend it.
So when someone is out there as not necessarily an artist, but an individual who's on a path that they need guidance.
Yes.
Where do we look for that?
Okay. So that ties in with mentorship and coaching. I'm a firm believer. I am a mentor through a Canadian company for other artists, but in any field, seeking out a mentor. And a mentor doesn't necessarily mean you have to sign up and pay for a mentor, but find someone in your community that you really look up to, and then just ask them out for coffee and see what happens. The worst that can happen is they'll say, oh, no, I'm too busy. So try to set yourself up with some mentors, some people to talk to and get advice from. And if you do want to pay for a coach, I'm 100% behind it, because when I made that huge transition, I did hire an art coach, and she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I thought at that point I wanted to move to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I hired her, and she really, really helped me a lot navigate the art world.
In which ways did she help you?
Well, she helped me a lot with staying healthy. She was very much a health coach as well, which I didn't even realize that when I hired her. I thought she was an art coach, but she said in order to be a good artist, you have to be healthy. It's a very physical job.
It is.
You're carting everything around. And so we started working on health routines, good diet, and a little more exercise, that sort of thing. And then the other thing was, and I'll never forget, she said that things should flow effortlessly. Effortlessly.
Things should flow effortlessly.
And if you find yourself and you're not flowing, you're not getting through these roadblocks, there's probably something out there telling you to ease up on yourself a little bit, just ease up, because if it's meant to be, it should flow. It sounds a little out there, but it worked for me. She also encouraged me to start meditating, which I did, which I still do.
I was just going to ask.
Yes.
Some way that you fill your own cup up. What would that be?
That would be through meditation
Okay.
and my journaling. But the meditation I had kind of forgotten about, because I was trained in transcendental meditation a long time ago. And I kind of lost track of it, but then she reminded me to bring that back into my life, and now I have that resource, and I call it a tool for me. It's a very much a tool when I get in situations that I feel a little bit uneasy, or I'm a little bit anxious. I can turn to that meditation and breathing techniques, and that pushes me through. Very helpful.
Those are some wonderful pieces of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And just here in our last few seconds, what is one piece of advice that you would share to a woman in the Great Lakes Bay region?
Oh, yeah. And visualization. I feel that people don't tap into their subconscious enough. I think that daydreaming is kind of like when you hear the word, oh, you're just a daydreamer. Be a daydreamer. Tap into that. Let yourself get into that zone, either through meditation or through breathing, or just those few minutes right before you fall asleep, and let yourself visualize yourself either through a challenging event that you have coming up, or an idea for a new painting, visualize, watch yourself do it step by step. I visualized this whole interview last night, so
And you know what? It went well.
and it went well.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for coming on. And thank you for everyone for tuning in, because that was Miss Valerie Allen, and that's what she said.